Welcome to the Let Me Take a Selfie podcast, where we talk about how you can get the most out of your life through your self-care and well-being. And now for your host, Ben Rashley.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Let Me Take a Selfie podcast. On today's show, we're going to be interviewing a not-so-regular Joe. Now, today's guest I've known for quite a long time, and I'd have to say he's one of the most creative people I know. An award-winning screen composer, a music producer. He runs and owns his own successful music studio and business. And if you do own a TV, you probably most likely would have heard his work in the past or even currently. On the other side, he's a man who's committed to his family as well as his own health, and which has definitely had a few roadblocks along the way, which we're going to discuss today. And so that's why I've invited him on the show, is to share his inspirational story on how he manages a home life, a professional life, as well as managing an autoimmune disease and his health. Cornel, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ben. How you going?
Very well indeed. I have to say, obviously speaking to someone who is in the sound game and, is very successful at what he does. This is probably going to be the first interview where my guest's sound is going to be better than my sound on the podcast. So I actually look forward to hearing what that sounds like at the end of this. It'll be really
I'll
cool.
be very critical of the final result.
Yeah, please don't take too many notes on my editing and sound engineering. Yeah, it's very basic. So anyway, Cornel, the reason why we got you on the show is obviously just about sort of, I watch you on a day-to-day basis, and everything that you sort of go through on so many different levels, whether it's your own body, it's obviously the stresses of, what has been a Melbourne lockdown, so managing a family life and working professionally from home, but also, you're a very busy man in your professional life as well, working with, a lot of overseas companies and shows and productions, and, working all the way through even the day, through the whole night, the whole weekends, like everything's sort of, thrown in and out of complete disarray. And then, you manage a autoimmune disease on top of that is incredible and inspirational. So what we would love to know is a little bit more about the autoimmune disease that you have, being ankylosing spondylitis, and probably sort of how that came about, how, not obviously the cause of it, because that's hard to really sort of pinpoint and tell, but sort of how did Cornel find out about it, and sort of what led you down the path of discovering that you had ankylosing spondylitis?
Yep. Okay, so it's a good question, because actually I'm only starting to realize now how I discovered it and how I have unknowingly managed it for a while before it became this thing that was knowable. So I was officially diagnosed with it 5 years ago, but I can clearly say I've had it all my life, and it's only recently that I've worked it out after talking to friends and family. So ankylosing spondylitis, in a nutshell, is an autoimmune disease where your body attacks its joints, and the result of that is inflammation in the joints. And those joints aren't just like, the obvious joints in like the knees or hips or elbows. It's like in your ribs, in every point where your ribs connect, and think of everywhere where a bone touches another, a bone, and it's just like it's there. And one of the things about ankylosing spondylitis too is the randomness and how it can travel and move around the body and attack different places at different times. And exactly what causes this is still an unknown. And I'm certainly trying to make I'm trying to find not closure, but trying to make some very big educated guesses. But I found out after it kind of reached a critical kind of tipping point about 5 years ago, where it's like, okay, this is not normal. I try so many things. I am generally quite healthy. I eat very well. And at that point, I was even exercising a lot, like more than I ever have in my life. It's like, what is causing this? So I went to quite a few different sources and found this one doctor I should say naturopath. That's like, look, I've got an idea, and I think I might know what it is, but she wouldn't tell me what that was. She goes, I just want to just check these things out first. Let's just check, get some blood tests and find out some things. And sure enough, I had this gene called HLA-B27, which is an indicator that you're prone to getting it. And suddenly looked that up and realized what, I kind of came to the conclusion that she was about to tell me the next day. And then when we met up, she's like, look, it seems to be the case. So then I went to a rheumatologist and brought all his data, and they're like, oh yeah, that's clearly what you've got. So it's taken, at that point, it took me, God, how old am I? 40 something years to work that out. But what I'd realized is that probably from about 8 years old, I'd clearly had it, and it began as a lot of pain in my groin and my hips, and it kind of would manifest into me limping around a lot. But at the time, I come from a family that was athletic. My dad was an Olympian, so I was keeping fairly active, even though I was heavily into my visual arts and music. I still was keeping pretty active, and I was, doing a lot of sprinting at that stage at state level, which was really fun. But it slowly started taking things over, and I found myself doing a lot less. Mm-hmm. And as a teenager, I guess it just got me down. It got me really down. Like I would feel quite depressed, realizing that, oh no, I can't go and do that thing. Like I'm way too sore. And you take those things at that age, you probably don't, well, I certainly didn't delve into it enough and just accepted certain things, that I'm just not that kind of person. And I kind of lived like that through my 20s, where I just realized I'm just not that kind of physical person anymore. It's just not going to happen. And it wasn't until I kind of turned about 30, I thought, screw that. Like I need to do something about this. So, I joined the gym again. I took up a few little, I took up jogging and squash with a few friends, and that was like really great. And it disappeared. It disappeared for quite some time. And I thought, okay, that's simple. A few years later, it came back again. And then when it came back again, it manifested in a very strange swollen knee that led me to surgery, because it blew up so big that I was in so much pain. I was in emergency. Like we just got to open it up. We don't know what's going on. And it's those kind of things that progressively kind of got out of hand. And as I got older, those things became a bigger part of my life. And it was just getting really frustrating. It's like, there's got to be some link to all of this. And sure enough, I got diagnosed. It made so much sense. And then suddenly, my sister has it. It's like, of course, that's what we've been battling. And then my cousin has it. And then, my mum talks about her uncles with hunchbacks and aunties that couldn't walk properly, that had stiff backs. It's like, my mum's from a Southern Italian background, and unfortunately, I feel like my family from that world that all moved from Italy to Adelaide, they live in their small little village, and they all walk around with hunchbacks, and they just accept this fate as getting old. And now
As being a part of life. Yeah.
It's a part of life. And what's funny is that I'm like, hey, Mum, like as a kid, when we'd go around to Uncle and Auntie's house and they were all kind of hunched over and could barely walk, I always saw them as really old. How old were they when we were going around? She's like, oh, they were like 60. And it's like, as we're getting older and approaching that, it's like, that is not old. And what were they doing? Just accepting their fate. So that's really triggered me to not go down that path. And I've got a really good kind of barometer with a few other people that I know that have ankylosing spondylitis, one being my sister, who haven't done the same level of maintenance that I have, that have required surgery. So, I can see where it can go. I can see the unmaintained body, and I can see the maintained body, and I like where I am.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking, just sort of obviously having a barometer with something comparatively, like your sister, you said, was that surgery got to do with things like bone fusion or like sort of osteophytes, wear and tear in the joints? It was a hip replacement.
So yeah,
right.
It's basically her hip had completely worn out. And you look at the joint, you look at the X-rays. There's just it's this massive hole.
Like the crater of a moon.
Yeah. So when I got diagnosed and then got my X-rays and found that my hip was going in that direction as well, I realized that I had to do more. I had to do a lot more.
Because obviously with the inflammation around ankylosing spondylitis, there is a tendency, especially in sort of more extreme cases, that you have this added bone growth for the body and the joints trying to heal itself, and there's calcification. And so obviously you're finding that's what was going on.
Yep.
Now, with obviously everything and adding a lot of movement into your day, have you found that sort of those scans of where your hip was going, has that sort of backed off a little bit, or is it still deteriorating quite quickly?
I'm actually due for another X-ray, which I'm really keen to see. But my last one was good. Like, I was at they call it a stage 3 kind of level of degradation, and I had barely changed. Like, there was over 3. It was only a 3-year period, this gap, mind you. So it's not like it'd be interesting to see in a decade, but it was, very little difference. And that's kind of what you want to see. You want to see, you're not going to reverse it. You're not going to get rid of this calcification. But how it looks compared to where it was going, and the kind of what seemed to be fairly rapid development had kind of slowed down. And, I'm happy. It's slowing down. Whether or not we've stopped in its tracks, we'll find out in my next X-rays. But it's working.
And that probably brings us to a bit of an important part of the conversation. There is no cure currently for ankylosing spondylitis, right?
No.
And so, but there are treatments that can help with the management of it.
Yeah.
Now, from our conversations over the years, there are a few different ways that you've been treating and managing your condition.
Yep.
Would you like to probably share with our listeners what those sort of techniques of management that you've implemented into your day, into your week, into your life?
Yep. I'll begin that by saying that the first thing that I was recommended by my rheumatologist was to regularly take anti-inflammatories, deal with it. And with the hope that things will get worse. And once they get that tiny bit worse, once I tipped over into the next stage, I would be eligible for the immune suppressants. And those immune suppressants work quite well, but they are immune suppressants. They come with a lot of other baggage and a lot of other terrible things that I wasn't feeling comfortable with. And the anti-inflammatories taken on a regular basis too are not great, and they were literally making me sick. Whereas if I'd had them 2 days in a row, I would feel extremely ill and my stomach would just burn. So very quickly realized that wasn't really a possibility. So, when I first started really looking at a serious approach, there happened to be a couple of really great studies going on in a few different countries, mainly in the US and Mexico, that I was reading a lot about, and they just couldn't, like most of these new tests were all about exercise and cardio and stretching. And I'm reading all this stuff. It's like, and these patients that were on a daily basis doing these things, most of it, sometimes it just included walking, sometimes it was jogging, and then Pilates came up a lot. I thought, well, this makes sense. And I had started Pilates earlier and had actually been on about a 12-month break. Sure enough, in that 12-month break is when it really reared its ugly head again. So it just seemed like the right thing to do is to go back to Pilates, because I actually really enjoyed it. And I felt like I feel like with my life and what's going on with my work and my family, I need structure. And sometimes creating my own structure, I create enough of my own structure running my own stuff that sometimes I just want to be told what to do. And that seems like, it seemed like the right thing to do. So I started doing Pilates again 2 times a week, and then augmented that with a lot of walking, and in some cases riding, depending on what I was doing. So my studio was on the other side of town. So however I got there had to involve some sort of physical work. And I found that over, the course of a good 6 months, I managed a great balance, worked out a lot of things that worked, and I found that I was maintaining it and I was keeping it at bay, which was just, I was just so ecstatically happy when I realized that it was something manageable.
Like, and we're talking years ago, like I know a lot of the research of late has definitely gone down that movement and how movement and sort of range of motion within a safe way can really help, addressing that inflammation, helping with the flare-ups of ankylosing spondylitis. However, I don't have ankylosing spondylitis, so I'm never going to understand essentially how it feels, except for the indicators that you give me. But, feeling really inflamed, really sore, almost like, and I think you've told me that it feels like sometimes your joints are on fire, your joints feel like they're about to break apart, all those sorts of things. And then someone's saying that you should be moving and exercising and doing that. I think on that sort of scale, on a personal note, you would feel like that's the last thing you want to do.
That's right. And now, you can see, like, it made sense hearing that the less you do, the worse it gets. It made sense suddenly. These relatives that I've got, and the other person who I mentioned who's another controller is my cousin. He's my first cousin. Yeah. And he's a bit older than me, but he hasn't done anything. In fact, his advice from his doctor was rest. Lie down, rest as much as possible. Rest as much as possible. He has basically, just feel so sorry for him, but he's basically now bedridden and is physically deformed from it. His joints have all calcified. He looks like your classic kind of, witch from a Disney film. The hunches, the knobbly hands, and this is what happens when you don't do anything. And you can see why that seemed like good advice, because it's bloody sore. There are times when it's like, I know how much it would benefit me, but there are times where I know that I just do not want to move. Like, I just would do anything not to get up and do Pilates or go for a walk because it's just so sore. But history has shown me that when I do that, I feel better. So it goes against your instincts, but you just have to go with, you've got, I see no choice, basically. No matter how tired. There was a point when I started realizing all this, before I actively kind of treated it as serious as this with Pilates and my exercise, I would actually have my alarm going off every few hours during the night so I could get up and go for a walk, just because it was the only thing that would give me relief, because I would just be half awake, half asleep in bed, tossing and turning in excruciating pain, because what it does do is it hits you when you rest. And that goes against your instincts, but that constant movement helps, but you don't want to be doing that at night. That's not a good thing to do. So it's about maintaining that during waking hours.
And obviously, like you also have spoken about, obviously a lot about Pilates. That's how you and I know each other.
Yep.
But you also do walking. There are actually a few other types of movement that you actually haven't mentioned that I'd love you to actually talk about a little bit more of. And they're probably cycling, but there's a few uncouth versions of exercise that people probably wouldn't have really associated into helping, that I'd love you to share with us, that you may or may not do with your daughters.
Yeah, okay. I think I know where you're going with this. Are you talking about trampolining?
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
absolutely.
I have to say that we recently, during lockdown, got a new trampoline, a good one of those springless trampolines, and I thought, cool, that'd be great. It's more than just great. It is so good for this, because you get all the benefits from a lot of that impact without anything too jolting that could hurt me. And honestly, I like today gave myself only 15 minutes on it, but 15 minutes of intense jumping, which must look great to neighbors, and I don't care. In fact, I never get embarrassed about these things, but it instantly just relieves things. I was in so much pain yesterday morning when I woke up, and to be in a stage now where I'm sitting on a chair and feeling great. So there's things like that. What else do I do?
Well, this is actually my favorite one, and it involves a hula hoop.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah. No, this is my youngest daughter Jeannie really got into hula hooping, and when she she's really good at it, and wow, I'm like, I used to be good at that, and got back into it again, and holy crap, it's just the remedy that I sometimes need, especially seeing as, I'd say a good 60% of the time, a lot of my inflammation is based around my hips. It's the most perfect movement, because it can still be fairly subtle, which is great. But it just, if you can get a good 10 minutes of hula hooping, which is a lot, by the way, it honestly just loosens things up, and I'm good for the day.
And I think that's a very sort of valid point, is that it's not about always what specific modality of exercise you're doing and what specific modality of movement you're doing, but it's getting movement into your body.
Yeah.
That's really important. And you've sort of said that from just all the different types of exercise and movement that you do, how they're all quite highly beneficial. And I think that's what our listeners need to also understand, that it's movement itself that's that amazing elixir and that amazing sort of lubricant for your body as well, which is really important.
Absolutely.
Now, being an autoimmune disease, there's also gut health and things like that. And this is obviously way out of my realm and scope. However, a little quick plug back to episode 2 with Monique Stignity, the nutritionist. She spoke to us about gut health and immunity, and sort of gets back into a lot of that. So if the listeners haven't heard episode 2, I'd suggest after listening to our chat with Cornel, maybe go over and have a listen to it so you can understand a little bit more how gut health and the immune system works. But getting back to you, Cornel, obviously what you put in your mouth really affects as well.
That's right, yes.
Your flare-ups.
So that became a real rabbit hole as well, where it's like, oh, okay, autoimmune disease has clearly got to do with gut health, and sure enough, there are many connections that people have studied, and I really got into it quite heavily and worked. I feel like I've got a really switched on naturopath that really helped me. I kind of did a bit of research and spoke to my naturopath and found someone who I really liked the sound of, gastroenterologist that was very deeply into autoimmune diseases, and did some testing and sure enough, there was a parasite that I had that there's not a lot known about, but it's called blastocystis, and some people say they know a lot about it, but what we're finding recently, there was this connection to people that are prone to blastocystis also have a lot of autoimmune diseases that ankylosing spondylitis is one of them, and sure enough, I got blastocystis twice. So, whether or not it's that, it doesn't matter. Went into a really kind of deep dive into gut health. And I think, however many years it was now when I was actually telling you about it, like I'm doing a massive cleanse and basically bombing my gut with antibiotics, the exact thing that a lot of people don't want to do, and then reset it. And I did a big reset. It took me a while to kind of get back to normal, but what I noticed is that I started getting some sort of equilibrium between my gut and my ankylosing spondylitis. And for a good 12 months, I had everything in check. And then, I kept my diet really low on anti-inflammatories. Inflammatory foods. But, life is life and humans are humans. And I do like my coffee. And it's like, there are some things that I'm going to have to just deal with, whether my body likes it or not. So I let a few things back into my diet, and, kind of had a good management there. And sometimes it goes downhill again, but, I can pretty much ramp it back up. But I found that if I can kind of keep that in order and watch certain foods. Now, the foods that I know are problematic for me are not going to be the same for everyone. But, it's safe to say that anybody with any kind of autoimmune disease like this, any kind of inflammatory kind of foods are generally not that good. So I kind of became really careful and realized that my gut was better, my digestion was better, my inflammation was better. It wasn't gone, but it was suddenly I didn't have to work as hard on the exercise to get the same head above water results, which was, great. So it's not the magic bullet. It's not like it's gone. You get your health, you get your gut together. I'm sure that in the future that might be the case. There might be things that we'll find, but for the moment, it's working.
And, you've spoken today about your maintenance of exercise, your maintenance of your nutrition, and then also saying it's not the magic bullet. And in society these days, agree with me or not, humans tend to like instant gratification, and almost like this magic pill to solve it and cure it, or just to be rid of it. Now, obviously, everything you've spoken to us about, you're in there for the long haul. What's your view on being in for the long haul as opposed to knowing full well right now that there is no instant gratification, there is no instant relief? It's more of a maintenance thing, and sort of how people can get caught up with not really wanting to be drawn to the work behind what you have to do just to keep your body functioning at a good level in the day-to-day.
Yeah, look, this is the stuff that I think about a lot, and these are conversations I have a lot with other people, but there's very little glamour in maintenance. Maintenance is not something that you go, hey, I'm going to the gym and I'm maintaining my body. It's like, no, everybody wants something. Everybody wants, a friggin' six-pack or wants some sort of like, I want to be able to go to the beach this year in my bikini. And it's like, I just feel like That's great. That's great. But everything, I feel like I don't use social media much, but when I do go to social media, everything's about closure and gratification. It's like you can obtain this result. And it's I don't think, God, we're going to get into philosophy here, but I don't think life is about that. I don't believe in, I don't know if you know them, gonna get deep here, but into the philosophical term materialism. I don't believe in materialism. I believe in ideology, which is all about, our perception of life is actually not physical. It's all in the head. And I don't, I don't in any way believe that our mind can change matter and our mind can change body, although there's great tests of people practicing Pilates or things in their head and they're getting some muscular results. That's amazing. That's another kettle of fish. But I do believe that society wants results, but actually getting results sometimes is maintaining yourself. That is a pretty fucking great. You know what? After having this for all my life and realizing what I've got now, maintaining myself is a bloody great result. And I respect people that go for more, but those people also need a lot of closure in their lives, need to know what's the end of this story? What's the end of this? I need to watch the whole series so I can find it. Just accept that life goes on and there are obstacles and there are changes. Just do things that are good for you. And that's what I've come to the conclusion is not boiling things down to end results, is just putting the effort to maintain, because as I think it was a John Lennon quote, life is what happens between all your plans. And I feel like, I think my wife would laugh at that, hearing me saying that, because I'm constantly planning things. But it's true, and I kind of live by a lot of that, because I feel that if I can maintain things, and if I can not always think about the end results, the doing is actually really pleasurable. And I'm starting to realize that the doing is greater than the end result.
It's the journey traveled.
And and it's a beautiful thing. So in respect to like all this work and maintaining my body, it's like I'm enjoying just the doing. And that's where I am with that right now. I'm not ever going to give up on trying to find out more information, and I'm sure that over the next 10 years we'll see some revolutions in the idea of autoimmune diseases. I'm sure of it. But the idea of the silver bullet and the thing that would stop you and change you, I haven't given up on that, and I don't like the idea of ever giving up on anything, but it doesn't seem like the right path. The right path is, this is what we've got. Take your opportunities where you see them, and do what you can. And this is what I can do. This gives me results. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very important summary to make, is that you are in it for the long haul, and it's being mentally okay with it, that it is going to be for the long haul. And even though that, there's not really closure around, and being mentally okay with that, you've developed this sort of relationship with investing back into your body, which then has actually given you not closure, but there's improvements. There is a mental improvement. There is being an okay with yourself improvement. And then obviously there's physical, because if you're not getting worse, that's a win.
That's a win. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's so many different ways to look at it. And there are times when, I probably, if you would have caught me Sunday night, for example, where I had a really big bout of inflammation, it might have sounded like things weren't working. But you know what? That level only happens every now and then. And accepting that that's a part of this, but doing what I can when I can, that's a pretty good balance compared to other people I know. So I'm happy with that. I've come to peace with it. As long as I constantly keep doing something and I'm able to remedy that, that's all that really matters right now.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. It's I think you said before the show, it's not very sexy. However, You know, it's winning. It's winning for you. So I think that's great.
That's right. Who wants to talk about, what did you do today? It's like, I maintained my body. I'm keeping my body above water, my head above water. It's like, it's not a sexy thing to say. I'm not walking out with the body that I would like for as much exercise as I do. There was a while there where I was quite depressed about that. It's like, I'm working this hard and this is what I've got to show. Not that I've got a bad body, audience, but it's just, it is what it is.
Well, I have to say, what else is not sexy as me hula hooping? So I think we're okay. I think I can understand you a little bit.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody that has similar kind of afflictions or similar things to just not worry about. I mean, look, never give up on trying to find out as much as you can, but maybe not everything is fixable.
And so, sort of to wrap up with today's conversation a little bit, for all the listeners out there that may have the condition or an autoimmune condition, or know someone else that has ankylosing spondylitis, if there was one or two points that you could pretty much say in a sentence each that's helped you, if there are views, mentalities, what would they be, just as 2 dot points for people to sort of come out and think about?
Okay, 2 dot points for people that have ankylosing spondylitis. One would be keep moving. Just keep moving. The other dot point for someone with this is don't feel bad. Just never give up on trying. And trying doesn't necessarily mean finding the silver bullet, finding the cure. Just never give up on trying to make yourself feel better. Because the moment that you give up, the moment that you kind of stop maintaining your body, it'll just start turning into a big bony mess. So yeah, I know it's easier said than done, and I know that they're very generic statements, but they're things that are just really important, and I probably did give up before I really understood a lot of this.
But also, while you're trying to nut something out and you're trying everything, you just want it to go away, and sometimes the generic statements and the generic points can get overlooked. So I think they're very valuable. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that brings us to the part of the show where every guest that comes onto the show runs with some rapid fire questions. Now, there are 5 questions that everyone gets, all the same questions, and it's more for us to just sort of see a little bit more about who our guest is and how they operate in their lives. So, Cornel, are you ready for the rapid 5?
Go for it.
Brilliant. First question. What is your morning ritual?
That's a good one. There is none. There is no morning ritual. When you have young kids, you have a career and business that spans time zones. I don't have a morning ritual. Instead, I live by take what I can get. I take what I can get when I can get it. I would love, and I'm sure that one day again in my life, I will have the opportunity to have a morning ritual, but I don't. So I take my rituals at different times and in different ways. And I have to be adaptable to what they are and when they are.
Yeah.
But I've certainly got some.
So it sounds like you're very, you've definitely developed a mentality where you're okay with things that are thrown at you and rolling along with that, Does that come from home life? Does that come from, obviously, the autoimmune issues? Who knows? But that's very cool. I like that. Most valuable lesson learnt to date?
That's a good question, and that really leads directly from what we just said. Everything changes. Adapt. things that you believe in will always have obstacles. Don't be upset about it. Just find ways to maneuver them. That is the most valuable lesson I've learned. I felt like, at 30, I was invincible, and then so many obstacles fell in my path. And from health to career to relationships to whatever, just adapt, learn from the things that fall in your lap, and don't treat them as obstacles. Just use that as an opportunity to learn a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, and humans, I may be right or wrong in saying this, but you'd have to probably say we're one of the most, if not the most adaptable species on the planet.
Yep.
And if 2020 can show us any of that, that's
right. Look at
year.
this. Our lives have changed from this year. We can use that that's amazing ability we have to change everything we know about our lives, and use it every day to adapt to the small obstacles, not just these big world pandemics.
Absolutely. What workplace or productivity tool could you not live without?
That's an easy one. Going for a walk.
We've had journaling, we've had phones, we've had AirPods, systems tools. No one has ever said going for a walk, but that makes so much sense. Break, you come back, you're refreshed, you're so much more productive. There's, it's in all the research.
Yeah, it's in all the research, and it just works.
Yes,
and
that's awesome.
Especially in my world of working in the creative realm, the last thing I want to do is use anything electronic to get some inspiration, or just a walk is enough to clear that headspace, to focus on something far away with my eyes, and to smell something completely different is just enough stimulation to trigger something.
Now, I actually skipped this one, but we're going back to it. Favorite health habit?
That's probably another easy one as well, actually. This one's pretty simple. Again, this is Pilates for me. It's a pretty good habit. It's
How's that for a good plug?
it's yeah. Well, it has I don't want to get all huggy and soppy about all of this, but it's changed my life. Like it's helped better than anything else. Yeah. There are so many things that help, but this is just, I enjoy the theory behind it. I enjoy the formalities. I enjoy it. Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I know it's more than a habit.
Good. I'm gonna make sure Maggie McGill hears this too. So,
yeah,
the original Pilates instructor for Cornel, Maggie McGill. So make sure she hears that. She'll love to hear that.
Yes, yeah. Look, she really made it fun for me when I started.
Yeah. And
just this idea, the analogies she would use of different animals, the octopus and the starfish, and they conjure so many ideas in my mind. It made so much sense. Yeah. And I love that. And I love the idea of thinking about your body in a different way. So yeah, it's a very simple answer for me.
Fabulous. Nice. Last one. What's Cornel's life motto?
Again, we're getting into very generic territory, and I'm sorry. I feel like we're getting into bumper stickers. But honestly, like never give up on something you believe in.
Yeah.
And just don't give up. That doesn't mean finding, as we were talking about, finding closure, finding the end result, but just always pushing in a direction. If you enjoy and are stimulated and believe in something, keep pushing in that direction, and overcome whatever obstacles there are. This is getting on you, AG. I'm sorry.
That's right. Yeah, it's a better bumper stinker than a few of those
bumper
ones
stinker.
Out there. Yeah, bumper sticker.
Yeah,
brilliant. And so much more about you, obviously, in this chat. And also, I think it's been a great sort of example of what someone can do for themselves when they just feel like they're treading water and it's slowly getting higher and higher and higher, and that water level is just becoming that all too consuming where, you know, they feel like there is no light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, sometimes it's not about the light at the end of the tunnel. It's about just getting your head back above water and keeping it there, which is really important.
Absolutely.
So I think loads of people can learn from this conversation. So once again, I thank you very much for sharing with us all what you have to offer. And
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I won't get you to play "Smells Like Teen Spirit" on the guitar or anything like that for us. We'll leave all that sort of stuff to another time.
Yeah, sure. Next
thank
podcast.
you for yeah, well, that's it. I'd say I would sing, but, you know, I do want people to actually listen to the podcast.
Oh, they want to hear that, surely.
Oh, maybe not. Brilliant. Anyway, thank you very much, Cornel, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you.
Brilliant. So, guys, if you liked what you heard on today's show, please make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you know anyone that you think would benefit from the show, please go off and tell them, or even 3 friends about it. And just don't forget, the most important thing in life is to give yourself permission to go take a selfie.